Well, I wanted to bring in someone who knew Charlie Kirk personally, so we're going to sit down and talk to Alex Marlow. He's the editor-in-chief of Breitbart. He's also the host of the Alex Marlow Show. Thank you, Alex, for being here. I would say happy to see you, but it's not a happy occasion at all. I wanted to talk to you first off because we're learning more about the shooter's partner and how the partner was transgender and transitioning from male to female. And we were told the last few days reliably, this has nothing to do with trans. This has nothing to do with woke ideology, leftist ideology. What do you think the significance is of the shooter's partner being transgender and living in that environment?
Well, we don't know exactly, but I think that given the etchings on the ammunition that was used to take out my friend Charlie, I think it's very clear that this was a part of it. I don't know if this is something where the shooter was radicalized because he was just in proximity to not just trans, but really even a sort of a more perverted subgenre of that stuff with the furry stuff, which I don't know, Linka, how much of that's real and how much of that's just online live action role play. But clearly he spent a lot of time on that, in a lot of focus on it. And that's part of the indoctrination that took place. That coupled with some obvious Antifa imagery there. And you've got a really potent cocktail of someone who was just going under rapid mental decline and into a violent rage.
No, absolutely. And then something that was mentioned last night at the Kennedy Center Vigil was how you send your kid off to college now, and they're basically being sent to an indoctrination camp, unless you're careful about where you send your college. Is that something you're hearing from people as well? Because I've gotten messages from so many moms the last few days. My audience is about 85% women. A lot of them are moms, and they're like, we're rethinking letting our kids have unfettered access to the internet, where we send them to college. I mean, what are you hearing right now the last few days?
Yeah, I'm hearing it too. And I don't know if I've seen the direct evidence that it was college that radicalized this guy. I think he was extremely online. I think that's what it was. And I think the trans killer in Minnesota was extremely online. I don't know if it was college, but I think it's a very healthy discussion because we know from millions and millions of data points, not ones that ended as dramatically as this one, but where a good Christian conservative family member was sent to college and came back a crazy freak. We know this happens over and over again in this country. And so maybe it takes this to start that discussion, to catalyze that discussion. And I think the same thing with the extremely online nature of things. I grew up on the internet, and but as the internet was evolving, I'm a little bit older than you, Link, I'm in my late 30s. And it's one of these things where the internet was always a presence, but it wasn't instead of a normal life. It wasn't instead of play for children. It wasn't instead of developing your own ideology and identity outside of your online avatar in your young adulthood. You had to have both. Especially being able to exist away from the internet. Now it feels like, when people say Twitter's not real life, now it feels like the opposite for some of these people. It feels like their online persona is the real version of themselves in their eyes. And that's darkly dangerous because it's a godless place. It's a place where people like Charlie are treated as threats instead of really interesting, reasonable people to debate and educate. And that's what I'm really afraid of here, is that this will be the first of many like this, and not even the first. It seems like there's a couple that are arguably come from the same ballpark of horrible ideas, and they all seem to stem from these very obscure online platforms that there's a lot of people on those things.
Well, I also think, Thomas Crooks in Butler on July 13th, extremely, online person. You had Ryan Ruth, who seemed like an extremely online radical person. So I think we just need more of a, look at what's going on in some of these online groups. And this is what I'm hearing from parents as well, because if you look at Tyler Robinson, grew up in a nice conservative family. I think most of the family, if not all, supported President Trump. And then you can watch a kid get sucked in through an algorithm or a social media platform down this rabbit hole. Suddenly he's in a chat room. Suddenly he's radicalized. His whole entire life is online. Maybe he never really fit in. And it's just like, we have to monitor this more. I mean, do you think as parents now more than ever, you just have to monitor what your kids are doing on the internet? You can't just let them roam free. And
absolutely, and it goes into young adulthood. And this comes back to your point about college, is that maybe a person goes to college and maybe they're not even going to class, but they're online with a lot of free time, and they might not be working, or they might not have a lot of hours where they're working a job. And so they're sitting there in their dorms and their computers. Even when I was in college, which I graduated, 16, 17 years ago, there were still a lot of my friends were getting sucked into things, whether it be World of Warcraft or just finding old videos of, MMA fights. And they couldn't bring themselves to go to class because they would just stay up all night watching this stuff or playing games. And then they would go to class maybe once 1 hour a day, like in the middle, if they had an afternoon class. And it's just not a great life. Not everyone is going to end up a murderer doing that, but it's just not a great life. And we've been very tolerant of it. And the reason why I've been tolerant of it is because it's a racket. The universities not only are huge economic engines, but they also indoctrinate people towards the left. So the left would never say anything because these universities also radicalize the people who are in the towns. They've ruined all of our cities because the universities are here providing jobs and providing leftist talking points to people who then live in these communities and further radicalize people. They're a total disgrace in this country at this point. They need to be defunded from the federal government.
No, absolutely. And I think something you can speak to being a friend of Charlie Kirk and knowing him so much better than I did. And I wish I could have gotten to know him more. Charlie Kirk spoke to young men in this country. And I think young men more than ever are feeling despondent. Maybe they feel like they're down economically. They don't know where they fit in. They don't know how they're going to have a home, a partner, all of these things. And I think a lot of these young men, that's why they're being sucked into these online groups. Have you seen that as well? I just think there's something about young men in this country right now where much more than the women, they're feeling disenfranchised and they're much more impressionable and malleable to get pulled into these sort of freakish online forums.
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you look at the way the universities are built, they're just more designed for the way women learn, which is just a fact. We've been seeing this, how women are succeeding more at universities than men, even smart men. It's just the way they're structured. It does not favor men. And then men get out into the working world and it's harder to compete. It is the entry-level jobs are starting to dry up sometimes thanks to AI, which is another thing we're gonna have to worry about. The last jobs report was very troubling for this way. And I think AI is going to provide a lot of opportunity for people, but it's also going to mean that some of these lower level jobs are harder to get. We don't have a great apprentice or mentorship program now in this country because everything is remote, which is one of the results of COVID. Now, I'm a remote worker. I like that. I'm more comfortable. So there's not a blanket remote work is bad sort of thing, but it's harder for younger males to find role models. And then what is the currency online? It's declarative statements. It's people who act like they know everything about the world. And it's people who are hyper confident. And a lot of that is just performative. A lot of it's not real. And so where do young men turn? There's not a lot of avenues for them to turn to. And I think Charlie was trying to reach a lot of that group. And I think he was effective in it because he's not as strident. He's not as misogynistic as some of the other male voices that you might see out there.
Recently, I learned about colostrum, the very first milk known as liquid gold that babies receive from their mothers after birth, packed with proteins, natural growth factors, antimicrobial peptides that work to enhance your immune response, reduce inflammation, repair and balance gut lining, reduce bloating, and make your hair and skin look amazing. Today's sponsor, Cowboy Colostrum, offers the highest quality cow colostrum available in the US, 100% made in America from 100% American grass-fed cows. They don't overprocess or strip their colostrum, leaving it whole, full fat, and high protein for ultimate nutrient density. It's the highest quality bovine colostrum you can buy. Cowboy is easy to drink, made with delicious natural ingredients and no artificial flavors. Simply add a 3-gram scoop of either our chocolate, Madagascar vanilla, or strawberry into your coffee or smoothie. For a limited time, our listeners get up to 25% off their entire order. Just head to cowboycolostrum.com/link and use code LINK at checkout. That's 25% off when you use code LINK at cowboycolostrum.com/link. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you.